All right, so what I want to do today is kind of showcase a filtering system I've built for podcasts and specifically the pins that you can take. So let's take a look at how it works here. Basically, you can choose from any podcast that you have or that you're subscribed to, as well as any tags that you've assigned various things to, and add them all together here. And then you can also search and filter as you would regular content like that. So it looks very simple. It's just filtering. It's fairly straightforward, right? You would think. It actually can be a little bit more complicated, especially when we get into how the back end all works. So let's dive in there. The reason it is, I guess, a little bit more complicated than one might expect is the way the data is actually set up. And so basically what kind of controls it is we're searching ultimately for these main things called pins. But you'll see here, I tried adding in actually some tags in here that are kind of the user tags. Ignore this tags is Bubble just adds it in there. Basically, what this doesn't work because it's not unique to each individual, which is why I had to create this kind of what they call a junction table, this in-between table that actually maps out the related media, the specific pin that it's tagged to, so you can tag both pins and the episodes, and then the specific tag. So it just kind of maps those all together, right? But then that does lead into the trickiness of when you're filtering in Bubble on how exactly to set up these filters. It took me multiple different videos to kind of put this all together. There was really no obvious tutorial, I guess, on this, potentially because it is fairly a unique case. But basically the premise is, okay, so there's no filters kind of filtering anywhere. It's very basic. You just search for all of the pins, and then I have them kind of sorted by the date that they're created. But then you get into a little bit of complexity in the sense of in this section here, we have if there's a podcast filter that's applied, or there is a tags filter that's applied, or the filter for both of those are there, possibly, or somebody has typed into this text box here, in which case you need that text box plus the other tags that are also applied, right? So it can get a little bit complicated. So basically, I'll show you kind of how this is set up initially. So the podcast filter, so this one was fairly straightforward, I guess, more simple, but it does do that same search for the pins. And then what we are applying here is a filter. And then we chose the advanced filter option because basically what you want to have happen is anytime that the search filter contains this pin's related media's podcast. So because you're not searching by pin or you're not searching by media, you're actually searching by podcast, and they're all kind of linked together at multiple different steps going up, then you need kind of this pin's, that's how that all connects there. And then this search podcast filters current podcast. This is actually just a
block, brain fart, whatever you have.
This is just a custom state on this filter, and it's a list so that people can add multiple of the list. And then what I did, and what I find actually easiest, is rather than setting different states for different conditions, I guess, I just actually sneak two different repeating groups in here. One of them ends up being the selected items, and one of them is just the unselected items. And on the front end, it kind of just all looks the same. Similarly for up here, I just do one for selected and one for unselected, and have that custom state up here as well. And then in this case, it's just the tags that they've selected. So then when you get back over to this repeating group, it ends up filtering that custom state, whether it's in the pin. Easy enough, straightforward, just the podcast, not a big deal. It's these tags which have that unique situation of the junction table where it gets a little bit tricky. So if there are filters applied to the tags, then what it's going to do is that same search, in this case, we're going to search for the junction table item, so that user media and tag related item that maps those all together, and then we're going to find each item's pin, so the related pin that's in that table. So what this does is if the tag is in that filter for the current tags, then we need to filter for it. So again, straightforward, but just the process to get there, a little bit more tricky. And then of course, if they are combined, you have to combine these two things together, and then we're going to intersect, which means basically all of the list items that are in both of them, if they map up, then they're going to go into this outcome. If they don't line up, say I only had 3 fingers on one hand, then this pinky down here doesn't have a match, and so he doesn't get to be added to the list. Best demo you've ever seen on that, I guarantee it. So yeah, basically those, if they're intersected, they don't add together, and then that just results in the repeating list there for that. I guess the complexity here is with this filtered one, what I tried and started with several times is trying to have multiple different advanced filters in here for this pins one. That didn't work. There was no process to get it to happen. And one key component to that I didn't realize was this ignore empty constraints just completely gets ignored whenever you're using this advanced filter. So annoying that they don't tell you that, but yeah, it just isn't, just doesn't even get acknowledged when there's an advanced filter in there. So it's quite frustrating. And then similarly, so if somebody was to have an input in here and they were searching for something, these extra filters that we had also get applied in there. So I'm using the fuzzy search plugin for this one. They are just searching in here, then it's just the basic search. But then if they also have the various different tags, I have the same conditions added in there for each of those as well. So hopefully this was helpful, a little demo on how to do some pretty advanced filtering in my opinion. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments or send me a LinkedIn message.